This video is completely spontaneous. I just decided to sit down and talk about my personal experience, specifically how at 18, I was completely clueless about relationships. Normally, I'd try to hook you in with some intriguing statement, but instead I'll just say that real-life stories are what people find most engaging. The only issue is, when we read romance novels written by women from a man's perspective, or watch movies scripted to fit a certain narrative, they come across as completely unrealistic. They don't match real life, and honestly, that makes them dull to watch. A while back, I posted a video where I briefly mentioned some of the key moments in my journey, how I went from struggling emotionally to sitting here now, sharing my thoughts. I even touched on the fact that I had panic attacks. Today, I want to go deeper into that part of my life because I believe there are valuable takeaways, not just on avoiding such situations, but more importantly, on how to break free from them. At 18, I was incredibly naive. Life hadn't toughened me up yet. So when I met this girl, I immediately started idealizing the relationship. I assumed this was it. This was forever. My mind raced ahead, picturing a future together. And as we all know, the more you romanticize a relationship, the more emotionally attached you become. There's no other way. Naturally, that's what happened to me. This went on for a few months. At first, the relationship seemed fine, if you could call it that. But after a while, things started shifting. She became distant. She grew colder. She began canceling plans. Classic behavior. Since I had no real understanding of relationships at the time, I was completely lost. I didn't know why it was happening. I tried calling her, asking what was wrong, attempting to talk things through. But I never got a clear answer. And now, of course, I understand why, because there was no reason for her to give me closure if she still wanted to keep me around as an option. How did I end up in such an emotional mess? And how did it escalate to panic attacks? Looking back, I truly believe that a tough heartbreak is a necessary experience for a man. At some point, you need to go through serious emotional pain. Being rejected by someone you deeply care about, feeling that sting of loss. It's a crucial part of growth. The real challenge, however, is handling it the right way. Some guys don't. They fall apart, learn nothing, and keep repeating the same patterns. If this girl had just outright ended things and told me, it's over, I might have been able to move on without learning anything. I wouldn't have drawn any major conclusions. I would have just carried on with my life. But instead, she kept playing this push and pull game. One moment we were close, the next she was gone. Meetings got postponed indefinitely, and I was just stuck in this limbo, waiting, hoping. What do you expect from an 18-year-old who doesn't know any better? As the distance grew, I fell into a bad state. My appetite disappeared. I stopped going to the gym. Back then, I was in solid shape. I weighed over 80 kilograms, had abs, and was about 182 to 183 centimeters tall. But for 2 straight weeks, I barely ate. I have no idea how I even functioned. I dropped several kilos, losing pure muscle. To make matters worse, I became obsessed. I would constantly check when she was online, see when she was last active, waiting for some kind of sign from her. I searched the internet for answers, but all I found were meaningless cliches like, "Don't worry, time will heal everything." That didn't help at all. I had no one to turn to. My friends, they were in the same boat as me, clueless. And you know the kind of advice friends give. Either don't let her humiliate you, or just forget about her. Neither of those were useful. Things got worse. I'd wake up at 4 to 5 a.m. with my heart pounding over 100 beats per minute. Sometimes I'd feel nauseous. I had no clue how relationships worked, and I had no way of pulling myself out of this downward spiral. This dragged on for months. I was in a terrible state, but I never went around seeking sympathy. I didn't expect others to feel sorry for me. I dealt with it alone. Then something changed. Somehow, despite my inexperience, I had at least one instinctively correct response. I never begged her. I never threw myself at her feet. I suffered, but I kept my dignity. Eventually, I realized I had tried everything. I had done all I could to fix things and none of it worked. The worst part? She never actually ended the relationship. That was when I felt a shift, a deep, uncontrollable anger, but not towards her, toward the situation itself. That anger transformed me. I made a vow to myself that I would never allow myself to be emotionally powerless in a relationship again. Without knowing anything about no contact or ignoring, I simply stopped reaching out. If she messaged me, I didn't respond. At first, she messaged once, then twice, then more frequently. Later, she sent a message saying she was near my place and planning to go somewhere nearby, clearly hinting for me to invite her out. I ignored it. Then she outright said she wanted to get back together. But I knew this wasn't real change. It was just a temporary emotional reaction. I made a mistake. I gave in. We met again. And of course, the same cycle repeated. She rejected me all over again. That was the final straw. I reached my breaking point, but instead of breaking down, I felt something inside me shift permanently. I swore that no matter what, I would never allow this to happen again. I cut her off completely. She texted me. I didn't respond. A few days later, another message. "Oh, so that's how you're treating me? Fine, goodbye." She expected me to panic, but I thought, yeah, enough of this nonsense. Weeks passed. Then at 4 a.m., my phone rang. Without thinking, I answered. I didn't fully grasp the concept of ignoring back then. She made up some excuse to talk. I responded coldly. She was taken aback. She hung up. 30 seconds later, another call. That's when I knew I had flipped the script. From that moment on, I changed. I made a rule for myself. Once I make a decision, I don't go back on it. Whether it was the right call or not, I stick to it. It's a tough habit to develop, but once you do, life becomes simpler and more focused. No more endless overthinking and second guessing. From then on, I never broke no contact early. Never. How did I recover? I channeled my frustration into training. Got back in shape within a month and a half. Fixed my sleep and diet. The pain didn't disappear instantly, but I was back in control. If you're going through something similar, understand this. You have a chance to transform yourself. If you waste it, you may never fully recover. If you enter no contact and hold your ground, even if she never comes back, you win because you've conquered yourself. The moment you stop acting like a victim and start taking control, everything changes. A lot of guys want to be strong and confident, but only in theory. If you truly want to change, you have to fully commit, not just pretend. That's how I changed, not through self-help books, but through action. And in the end, she did try to come back, but by then, I had changed so much that I no longer cared. That's the real victory.